Please be seated. The House has resumed.
Questions to honorable ministers and members of the cabinet.
The elected member for Newlands we call on the Honorable Premier for suspension of standing orders to allow questions to be asked after the hour of 11 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 in order that questions may be put to ministers after the hour of 11 a.m.
Question is that standing orders be suspended to allow for questions to be asked after the hour of 11 a.m. All in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Standing orders are suspended. The member for Newlands is absent? Yes. Out of the chamber, I should say. So question number 2 then.
Elected member for Georgetown Central to ask the Honorable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. Question number 2.
The elected member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the question standing in my name on order paper number 2. Can the Honorable Minister provide an update on the Georgetown Revitalization Project?
The Honorable Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the answer is we are happy to report that the revitalization is well in hand with a number of pocket projects currently underway. First, we took the COVID-19 opportunity to undertake an extensive as-built survey of downtown, recording boundaries, sidewalks, and curbing details, utility lines, and other physical features. This was something that was never on record, but will prove invaluable to the redevelopment project in the long run. Mr. Speaker, with the hiring of a local transport engineers and architects, the manager has focused on pedestrianizing, lighting, and enhancing downtown through proper design and technical expertise. Some of this work has begun with the redevelopment of Phase 1 of the Heroes Park and the Port Authority Taxi Depot last year, to the current redevelopment and enhancement of Cardinal Avenue, Elgin Avenue, and Main Street. The team has been meeting with stakeholders of the area, and we anticipate construction to commence in the final quarter and run throughout the early quarter of next year. My ministry has coordinated the amendments to the development and planning law that will come before this Honorable House. These changes will provide more flexibility for sustainable mixed-use development and parking arrangements. We are also now in the final stages of launching a pilot park and ride shuttle service for the urban district that will benefit our environment and help reduce congestion. Mr. Speaker, we are excited about these capital investments in our town center, and we anticipate that they would help bring back the pride and vibrancy that we all desire to have for our capital, Georgetown.
Supplementaries, the member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honorable Minister say if the Georgetown Central Scranton Park development is considered to be a part of the Georgetown Revitalization Project?
Honorable Minister of Planning.
Mr. Speaker, the Georgetown Scranton Central Park is being managed by the town manager, Mr. Colin Lumsden. So yes, it is being developed under the umbrella.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister say what commitments were given to the Georgetown Central Scranton Committee, non-profit committee, as to what assistance you would be giving to that project development? Or do you have an outline of exactly what you will be assisting them with?
Honorable Minister of Planning.
Mr. Speaker, that's another substantial question. I think if the member, I'm happy to come back and speak to him more in detail about that if you want to ask. But at the moment, we are at the schematic design and fixed boundary survey. The schematic design and the fixed boundary survey has been completed, and I know that the committee had a meeting with the town manager, I think it was last evening, to discuss the next steps.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister say if the list of things that he previously highlighted in the opening of his answer is all the things that have been done in respect to the Georgetown revitalization from 2017? If not, can the Minister list what other things have been done that were not listed in his answer?
Honorable Minister, can you answer that? Do we need more elaboration from the member?
Yeah, I don't know if the member is trying to find out something in particular, but he's very aware of all of the works that we've done. We've had town hall meetings. As I said, surveys have been done. We've been doing a lot of background work, if I should say, describe it that way. So, but if there's something in particular the member would like to know about, I'm happy to try and provide that answer.
Honourable Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for clarity for the Honourable Minister, what I'm trying to establish is that there was a campaign promise to do a revitalization of Georgetown by this leading administration. So I would like to know what the list of things that have been done in the last 3 3/4 of this administration. So I'm asking you, I heard what you listed just now in your answer. Is there anything else outside of the things you've listed on here that has been done in the last 3 3/4 years? So that people can assess whether or not you've fulfilled your commitment to the Georgetown revitalization or not. If that makes it more clear.
Honourable Minister, do you want to take some time to collect your thoughts on that, or you feel that's something you can answer immediately?
I will try my best to answer that. I guess this is politics. It's politics time now. Mr. Speaker, Central Business District enhancement, that aspect of it is a complete redesign and enhancement of Cardinal Avenue, Post Office intersection, and Edward Street and Main Street. Scope includes resurfacing of asphalt to pavers, addition of an integrated pedestrian crossing, urban street lamps, underground utilities on Edward and Main Street, new curbing, drainage, and proposed mature local trees, and urban furniture including benches, planters, and garbage containers. Construction documents in the business case are complete, including a full survey of the town center from boundary to boundary. We're currently at the Enterprise Procurement Committee level, the EPC, for public tender approval, and work is expected to start in December or January of 2021, delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Heroes Square Enhancement Project, Phase 2, works includes the addition of marble bus monuments, redesigned fountain with marble tile upgrades, mature local shade trees, urban street lamps, pavers, flag poles, and benches. Construction drawings are complete, and we are getting ready to tender the project this week. Traffic and parking study, a study of the existing parking and traffic impact study in the revitalization area, currently being assessed by APEC engineers and traffic consultants, and should be completed by the end of October. The Urban Lighting Program is a joint partnership with Caribbean Utilities Company to bring proper LED street lamps to the Central Business District. The lamps have been selected and specified and currently being ordered by CUC. Park and Facility RFI and RFP solution-based initiative based on the revitalization plan to see the feasibility and costs associated with building a parking facility at strategic locations. Sorry, I have a lot to say, sir. It's been 3.5 years I've been working at this, so I will. Working groups formed to do a request for information, and the request for proposals should follow by the end of this month. Hogstye Bay North Terminal. This is a partnership with CUC and the Port Authority to resurface the taxi slip to stamp asphalt and addition of street lamps to the taxi slip area. Stamp asphalt area completed, and we are awaiting the arrival of the street lamps, which were, I said, previously ordered by CUC. I mentioned earlier this Scranton Park, in which we are assisting that community with the development of the park. As I said, they had a meeting yesterday evening with the town manager, and so I know things are progressing well. The upgrade of the 13E 166 Georgetown Courts, that is a property that we hope to acquire from the National NHDT, National Housing Development Trust, as they have identified and purchased a property on the Linford Pearson Highway, and schematic diagrams have been completed, waiting for the land acquisition process to be completed, as land is in the possession of the NHDT, and this we hope to finally give Georgetown a full park, including an area that we can hold our national heritage festivities, etc., because Georgetown, unlike any other district, do not have a heritage park. Planning code revision, a joint planning code revision between the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative team and the planning department to revise planning codes that would better facilitate the growth and revitalization of Georgetown. They have gone through the cabinet process, and we hope to address those in this sitting of the LA. The city furniture program, the addition of benches, planters, garbage receptacles, and display boards. Orders have been placed with landscape forms expected on island in early December. Hop-on, hop-off shuttle service. The addition of 2 to 3 electrical or low-fuel urban passenger shuttle with prescribed schedules and routes. The routes have been mapped and the schedules put in place. Price has been received to use local tour buses in the interim to do the routes, with the EV low-fuel RFP is 90% completed and should be put out within the next few weeks. It is anticipated that we will use the coaster buses provided by local tour companies in the interim until tourism returns. The Park and Ride bus service, Park and Ride facility identified to assist in local island-wide shuttle services, met with the Cayman Islands Credit Union Board in regards to using credit union parking area, and preliminary drawings are being submitted for approval. This is where you'll be able to either bus into town or drive into town, park at the facility in a lit and safe facility, and then jump on the hop-on, hop-off bus around town with a prescribed route. They'll be identified with the logo, the drop-off and pick-up areas, so that you can move around safely and comfortably. The office also held the Street Food Festival and a Saturday Night Live festivals, which were all interrupted due to COVID-19. And we are also heading up what, if you have seen in the local social media arena, a joint COVID-19 response initiative with the private sector to promote local, shop local, and experience all that Cayman has to offer. That launched this week, and is the uptake on social media has been tremendous, and thus far it has been a success. And then, of course, we will have our enhanced Christmas tree lightings and decorations around the business district as we did last year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for that extensive answer. I appreciate it. Just one last supplementary. Can the minister say whether or not the obvious fact that the port is no longer going to be going through, that must have had some effect on the plans for the Georgetown revitalization? Because I think most Caymanians by now would have seen the plans for the 4th Street and the road on our coastline. So can the minister say whether things had to be changed, what things may have had to be changed as a result of the port project no longer moving forward in respect to the Georgetown revitalization element?
Honorable Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am not able to speak to whether or not the port is going to happen or not going to happen, but what I can say is that it has no effect on the plans for the Georgetown revitalization.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would beg that I ask the minister a question that he can briefly explain to us. The current redevelopment and enhancement of Cardinal Avenue, Elgin Avenue, and Main Street. What does it entail?
Honorable Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for the question. It is a redesign of the traffic flow, including larger pedestrianized areas and crossings, major crossings. We have the ability, there'll be bolsters in certain areas that we have the ability to close off the area if there's going to be events there, etc. And there'll be a feature art piece monument in the middle. So it really looks to enhance the Cardinal Avenue area and the area in particular between the post office and what we would call the old Comart building.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister is focusing on pedestrianizing some of Georgetown. Are there any plans to redevelop the roads on the outskirts of Georgetown, on the perimeter of Georgetown, to facilitate that? Like Walker's Road and what's the name? The one there by Moringa Town and South Church Street. Boilers Road, yes.
Thank the member.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are a couple of initiatives, and when the pedestrianizing may be small areas, but when I talk about enhanced pedestrian crossings, it's the much larger city sort of pedestrian crossings. It's very hard to describe without showing the drawings. However, yes, we are approaching this with a very comprehensively. I spoke earlier about the RFI that should be coming out on public parking. We feel that is key as well, that persons have the ability to park in these public parkings. And then the hop-on, hop-off service so that you don't have to drive into the center of town to try and find parking, as well as the Godfrey Nixon extension, which goes from the Blue Marlin restaurant at Eastern Avenue intersection there out to North Church Street, and then the enhancement of Mary Street and the connection between Mary Street and Bodden Road going through, as well as that Godfrey Nixon extension. So we're going to kind of cut up that waterfront into city blocks, if you want to call it that. And so you'll be able to travel on the outskirts connecting. The works that were done on Smith Road were a part of it. We also, and the, what's the road in front of Government Building by Immigration? Humber Avenue. And then, of course, we hope to connect the Shedden Road to the Elgin Avenue. So yes, we are looking at the perimeters.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the minister said they have had discussions with proprietors in Georgetown. What plans are in place for the proprietors of Georgetown's involvement? How far are they going to participate in this redevelopment?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you. We have been in constant meetings and consultation with the private sector stakeholders. We have had a committee meeting, which was the technical committee, if you want to call it that, which include Port Authority, DEH, architects, etc. And now that we are at this stage, we are putting together the private sector committee as well, and they will continue to be involved in the ongoing redevelopment. It's important that we had extensive consultation with them to discuss how we could incentivize them or what would be needed for them to invest in the town center, and to talk about things like parking, etc. And then going forward, we want to make sure that any plans that they have are uniformed with the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
I thank the Minister for that, because we have all said at one stage or the other that the revitalization of Georgetown, which I started many years ago, would not proceed to the point where we wanted it unless the proprietors partake in it, and we need to give them incentives to do that, duty-free and stuff, to redevelop their buildings and the multi-use development, condos and penthouses and the likes. But they're not going to participate in it unless we give them something, and it shouldn't be one-sided government only. My question on this pilot park surrounds, Mr. Speaker, this is something that didn't just start today. The idea came up many years ago, but we're trying to get one of two places. The cricket field, when the Minister for Education was trying to move the cricket field by the UCCI, and I was trying to steal where the cricket field is to do parking, and then that didn't materialize, and where the farmers market, all that. But then I went across the road to that gentleman and was going in some agreement with him that we would enhance that, fill it in, and we had all of the information on buses. I think it was 12, 13 buses we figured would take people into town, like 50 cents a day for parking and the likes. I hear the minister say that we're going to use credit union. I don't know if that, I didn't know if that was sufficient parking. Has any other consideration been given for larger parcels of land so that we need at least 500-600 parking spots for us to be able to do it? But in conjunction with that, there would be no parallel parking in Georgetown then. Well, true. Right. Yeah, but in conjunction with what those plans were then, there would be no parallel parking, street parallel parking in Georgetown.
Minister, you care to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for the question. And yes, we are, again, the private sector is extremely important in this initiative, and we have several projects waiting on some of the changes to the upcoming planning regulations and laws. We've already seen an uptake, and we've been working with You see the coffee shop next door, the redevelopment of the CIBC building into now retail. There'll be a gym there, there'll be restaurants there, and we are working with about 3 other developers who are getting ready to launch major projects in the town center. The hop-on, hop-off will be an important aspect of that, and this is a pilot program, and you are right. The space will be initially limited there at the credit union. We are looking at surrounding lands, and we're looking to see whether or not we actually need to have another one on the opposite side of town. So persons coming in from West Bay would have a place to park without actually having to make the trip in through town or through the very busy Butterfield roundabout there. So these are all the things we're looking at. We're going to use the opportunity to provide some revenue to these tour companies and the opportunity to further assess the uptake on the hop-on, hop-off so we can properly plan for it.
Next question is.
The elected member for Newlands to ask the Honourable Minister of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands. Question number 1.
The elected member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 1 in order paper to the Honourable Minister of Education. Can the Honourable Minister state whether or not the Clifton Hunter High School currently has sufficient school buses assigned to the transportation of students to and from school?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer, yes, currently there are sufficient buses available and utilised for the Clifton Hunter High School students transported to and from the said school.
The member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wonder if the Honourable Minister could give us an indication of whether or not she's received any, or the Minister has received any complaints from parents about overcrowding on the buses. I guess some of that can be attributed to social distancing, but instances of overcrowding and bullying in terms of students not having sufficient space on the bus, especially on the to and from school.
Honourable Minister.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I have not been in receipt of any complete, but I can say, as far as it relates to the Clifton Hunter High School, there are 781 students enrolled at that respective school, and there are 756 students that take the bus in the morning and the evening. Their journey has 5 buses, Union 5, Whitaker 8. Journey, the first 5 buses, 224, Union 210, Whitaker 322, being the 756 that are transported.
Member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I won't belabor this, but I would ask the Minister if she could give an undertaking to look into the situation, because I've had several complaints now of, from parents in my constituency complaining that students, especially the smaller, weaker ones, I would say, are being bullied, fighting over seats, and in one instance, a child actually fell off the seat because she was hanging on to the edge. There's not enough space. So if we could look into that, because these buses don't have seat belts, and I'm concerned about safety.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. For the record, I will so inquire and revert anon to the questioner.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister say whether all the school buses are equipped with air conditioning for the school?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have that information with me. I can undertake to ask the staff and give it to the member tomorrow.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for that answer. Just to give the context, I've also had a number of complaints from constituents because of the fact that they are having to wear their mask on the bus, which makes it a little bit more awkward for the kids, and with the hot weather, particularly in summer, and even sometimes when it rains without AC and the windows having to be up, plus having masks on, makes it a very uncomfortable circumstance for these kids. So if there's no ACs in the buses on a rainy day, it'll be rather difficult.
The Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, this is not totally irrelevant, but it is in some aspect, some respects. I'm looking to get a commitment from the minister that she will work with the minister for the deputy premier and the minister for licensing and the governor somehow, that we get some amendments to this House on all those laws about public transport, about the installation of cameras in those buses, because on a daily basis we see people overtaking these buses and there is no evidence to prosecute them. Somehow we need to get that in place. I think the police law allows him to put cameras, but I believe those are fixed cameras to control traffic, if the AG would weigh in on that. But we need to get cameras fitted in these buses in order that, and then amend the law, public transport and otherwise, to ensure that people can be prosecuted with that evidence from those cameras. And I would ask the minister if she could somehow try to coordinate this to protect our children, our school children. And it should also include in those school zones.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. I've made a note and I'll ask my Chief Officer to contact the relevant Chief Officers to see if they can have an interministerial meeting to come to a conclusion which would bring the safety of our students of paramount consideration.
Next question.
The elected member for Georgetown Central to ask the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. Question number 3.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper, number 3. Can the Honourable Minister say if a flood management assessment was undertaken on the possibility of flooding of the adjacent roads as a result of the extension of the Owen Roberts International Airport runway?
The Honorable the Minister of Planning and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer, Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Airport Authority liaised with the NRA on the expansion works and the flood impact of filling the existing ponds near the fence line. CIAA provided an engineering assessment that included a stormwater plan prepared by its consultants that illustrated a new drain field and interconnecting catch basins and wells surrounding the new stopway. For redundancy, the NRA also added 14 new drain wells along both sides of the section of Crew Road that runs adjacent to the stopway.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister say if the CIAA followed the strategic implementation plan for stormwater management related to flooding and drainage?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, the CIA provided an engineering assessment that included a stormwater plan prepared by its consultants that illustrated a new drain field and interconnecting catch basins and wells surrounding the new stopway. And so they did liaison and provide a proper engineering study.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure to take that answer as a yes or a no, but I can repeat the question, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister say if they followed the strategic implementation plan for stormwater management related to flooding and drainage?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the CIAA is property, the airport, the airfield is property owned by the CIAA, and they went through the proper planning process, and they provided the proper engineering studies required under that process to deal with the stormwater management. I cannot say if they followed the National Strategic Plan, but they did what was required under the planning laws.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister say who has been appointed to the new committee to update the 2003 Storm Water Management Committee report?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that is a completely different question and a substantive question. I did not come prepared to answer that one.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I accept that the minister may not have the names, but could he at least tell this honorable House whether a committee has been formed or not? He should be able to know that.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my response is the same. I did not come prepared. That's another question. That's a completely separate question, has nothing to do with the runway and the flooding, whether or not they liaison with NRA. I did not come prepared for those questions, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister say if the property where the last of one of 3 culvert systems that the government installed in the South Sound area has been secured for permanent use or to be closed off and not to be closed off by development?
Honorable Minister. Can you answer that question?
Mr. Speaker, these are completely new questions. If the member wanted answers to these questions, I would have thought he would have submitted those questions. It has no relevance to the previous question.
Honorable Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do apologize. I just thought the minister would have been able to have these simple answer yes or no to the questions that the good people of Cayman need to know. But if he would like to provide the Honorable House and within this 2.5-week period that we're in here, it would be appreciated because these questions are very important. Also, Mr. Speaker, this is a commitment that the minister himself made to this Honorable House back in 2018 to have any kind of stormwater plans implemented in this country would follow, in his words, the SWMC, and that he would have it updated in short order. Now, it's been 2 years, and I would hate to want to read the Hansards as to his commitment to the people of the Cayman Islands and to me as my motion that he has not followed. He doesn't even know if there's a committee membership.
Mr. Speaker, I did not say I did not know. I told the member that I did not come prepared to answer that question. These have nothing to do with the questions that he presented to the House, that he filed with the House. This is completely out of protocol. This has nothing to do with the substantive question that he tabled in the House.
Honorable Member, I understand your eagerness to get these matters addressed. But the minister, even though you feel that they are short or quick answers, he's not ready. So can you move on to something else, or do you?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for highlighting that to me, but I would dispute the fact that this is not a relevant subject. Because the fact that they had to do a report on flooding, he would also know in respect to the SWMC report, because they have to be connected. Hence the reason the supplementary question would be related to the flooding element.
No doubt, honorable member, that you will feel that there is some relevance, and yes, it all deals with flooding, but the minister has said several times that he's not ready, and so me nor you knows what inside there. He says he's not ready, and so we have to accept that the minister has said he can't answer it at this time. Can we move on then, if there's no more supplementaries?
Elected member for Georgetown Central to ask the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, question number 4.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the question, standing in my name on the order paper, question number 4. Can the Honourable Minister say, how does the National Roads Authority decide whether to use chip and spray as opposed to tarmac to cover roads?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the answer, the NRA elects to install hot mix asphalt, that is tarmac, on public roads based largely on the following criteria: road classification, i.e. primary arterials, secondary arterials, and collector roads; traffic volumes, i.e. roads that carry over 3,000 vehicles per day; traffic type, heavy equipment versus cars and or type of vehicle, etc.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want the minister to forgive me with my lack of knowledge of how the engineering elements of road works are. So some of my questions may seem kind of novice, but I want him to work with me so we can help the public also, who are not professionals in this field, to understand. Now, Mr. Speaker, the minister answered, but I'm not sure if hot mix asphalt is the same as chip and spray, because we, as the average person on the road, we see those nice plain flat roads when they're done, and then we see some roads that are got these gravels all over the place and there's tar underneath it. Does this answer go to chip and spray, because in it doesn't say chip and spray, or does it go to asphalt? Forgive my innocence in respect to this.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the answer was the criteria that they used, and if he specifically would like to know when chip and spray is used, that is used. Chip and spray roads are primarily subdivision roads that are only frequented by typical light or moderate vehicle traffic.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe that should have been the answer first. Mr. Speaker, can the minister say if the chip and spray protocol for roads meet the criteria for the traffic laws and speed limit safety equations? Now, if the minister would like me to elaborate on that, I'd be happy to. But I think he may get what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Speaker, I'm no road engineer, but I do know that the National Roads Authority, they design the roads, they build the roads, and they decide on the material based on traffic volumes, speed, obviously subdivision roads, etc., would carry lower speed limits, the banking of the design of the roads.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to assume that not all of us are professionals in respect to that, in respect to road implication. And please allow me a little bit of preliminaries so I can explain to the minister what I'm trying to get at. Mr. Speaker, when we created the speed limits in this country, you created the speed limits on scientific mathematical equations on your tire and its ability to stop when it hits asphalt going at a certain speed. Mr. Speaker, that equation is based on a flat road, not based on gravels on the road, because any common person knows that if there's gravels on the road, that when you brake, you would slide. So the equation that is used within law to say 25 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour has to be different when chip and spray is on the road. Now, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member just highlighted that these are neighboring roads where our children play and walk home from school every single day. But I've noticed, Mr. Speaker, that when there's chip and spray, there's no discussion of caution signs to say that, you know, the normal braking equation does not work in this area, or reduce your speed down 10 miles more than normal for chip and spray areas. Hence the reason I have asked him, is there any engineering or special equations for roads with chip and spray? Because the braking mechanisms is totally different on gravel. Now maybe the minister can respond now that he understands what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try and respond to that. As I said, the chip and spray, which is not gravel, a gravel road is different from a chip and spray road, is used in the lighter travel areas, 25 miles per hour, and the safety standards for 25 miles per hour, or the chip and spray, can be used safely in roads with the speed limits of 25 miles per hour. The NRA in providing this form of pavement, as you know, once it goes down, they'll come and they'll brush off the loose gravel. They use watering trucks. I was watching them at Courts Road this morning, wetting down the road, keeping the dust to a minimum and the loose dirt, and they also periodically sweep the road until the surface has leveled off. But I am reliably informed that this is a method that can be used for your subdivision streets, etc., with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got two supplementaries, but one I don't think I'm going to get the answer to, so I'll just give the heads up to the minister that I'm happy to accept the answer another time. But can the minister offer up some sort of professional report from an engineer that supports the argument that he just said, that cars can drive safely at 25 miles an hour on chip and spray roads? I would like to have that provided to myself so I can provide it to the public, because I disagree with you wholly. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, can the minister say when, after the chip and spray is installed, do the NRA officials come back later on and take up the loose gravel? Is there a certain period of time, a month later, after it's set, 2 weeks, 3 months, when?
One moment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will.
Minister, Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Yes, I'll certainly provide the member with the specifications or the engineering guidelines on that form of pavement. And on the removal of the loose rocks, it is not done on a set time. They continue to monitor it and provide the sweeping of the road as it's needed.
Last supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Georgetown Central.
Can the minister give an update on the extension and widening of the Linford Piercing Highway from Angus Way to Bobby Thompson Way?
Honourable Minister, are you ready to answer that kind of supplementary, or?
Mr. Speaker, the area identified as Bobby Thompson Way and around by the what we call the next phase two of the Linford Pearson Highway. We have made tremendous progress. We have now basically come to an agreement with the landowners involved, and we are getting the final documentation done to bring it to cabinet. We have started some groundworks and will start some groundworks in the coming weeks in anticipation of moving forward. But we feel quite confident that we have resolved all issues with the landowners at this time.
Soup? Okay. Next item.
Statements by honourable ministers and members of the cabinet.
I have a few statements. First one, the Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My statement today takes the form of a State of the Nation address. These occasions are usually an opportunity to place on the record government's achievements and its plans for the year ahead. For those of you looking forward to that, I hope not to disappoint. As I contemplated putting pen to paper and the thoughts that would fill the lines, I considered the teachings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, late American essayist and thinker, and in particular his poem, A Nation's Strength, which he penned in 1847. Mr. Speaker, permit me please to paraphrase. What makes a nation's pillars high and its foundations strong? What makes it mighty to defy the foes that round it throng? It is not gold. And is it pride? Ah, that bright crown has seemed to nations sweet, but God has struck its luster down in ashes at his feet. Not gold, but only man can make a people great and strong. Those who for truth and honor's sake stand fast and suffer long. Brave men and women who work while others sleep and who dare while others fly. They build a nation's pillars deep and lift them to the sky. As I reflect on those words and the achievements we have made as a nation and a government, I am buoyed in the belief that the foundations of these islands have indeed been strengthened and built on pillars deep by the work we have done these past 7.5 years. And so if I were asked to sum up in one word the strength of our nation as we sit here today, I would use the word resilient. We began this year in a strong fiscal position with the economy continuing to grow and unemployment low. All things this government had promised would be delivered during our term in office. Indeed, for the first 3 months of this year, the country was doing exceptionally well. Cayman's economy grew by 3.2% in 2019, and unemployment was at a low 3.5%. It appeared that our major challenge was to overcome the problems of success. Inflation was running at 5.7%, and the government was acting to deal with rising prices. Commuters were spending too long in traffic jams, so we had embarked on highway improvements to ease congestion. But in the space of mere weeks, the situation changed out of all recognition. We have estimated that growth for 2020 will decline by 7.2%, with unemployment rising to 6.9% and inflation falling to 0.4%. A similar story is seen across every country in the world. Indeed, many economies, both in this region and globally, are faring much worse than Cayman. But whilst there are many here who are doing reasonably well, my government and I appreciate that there are also many Caymanians, especially in the tourism sector, whose livelihoods have been impacted by this pandemic. But we are working hard to not only try to safely get some tourism jobs back online, but also to provide assistance to these families and businesses, and I will speak more to this later. Mr. Speaker, I had warned in early March at the Cayman Economic Outlook Conference of the threat posed by a new virus which could have potentially devastating effects on Cayman. By the end of March, the COVID-19 virus was with us, and we were forced to shut the economy down to defeat the virus and stop community spread. That decisive action was necessary to protect public health and to save lives. Only by taking that firm action could we give ourselves the best chance to rebuild even stronger. The alternative would be death by 1,000 cuts, with repeated lockdown and opening up because we failed to do what we knew had to be done in the first place. Our people would have suffered from the virus itself, while in the long term our economy would have been hit even harder as confidence was adversely impacted. I am not guessing at this. We can all see what is happening in the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Spain, and elsewhere. That was not an outcome anyone would want. Today, despite our significant challenges, we are doing reasonably well, and our economy has indeed proved to be resilient, and in some cases even robust, particularly international financial services and much of the domestic sector. Our revenues are impaired, but government's finances are still strong and will help us get through most, if not all, of next year. But Mr. Speaker, the world around us, including our major trading partners, is filled with uncertainty. Given the turmoil of the last 7 months, the normal patterns of our society and our economy have been seriously interrupted. As such, it is not easy for us to understand exactly how things will develop as we move into 2021. Equally, there is so much left unknown about how events will unfold from here that it is difficult to plan properly for what is to come. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I cannot think of a time when it has been more necessary for a Cayman Premier to make such an address as this. Events beyond our control have created a set of circumstances facing these islands today that I think are unparalleled in our still short history as a self-governing nation. But, Mr. Speaker, despite the uncertainties around us, of this I am certain, we are, to a very great degree, still masters of our destiny. We need to move forward as a country and as a people, and to do so determinedly together. Crucially, I'm thinking, Mr. Speaker, of the need to maintain vigilance in the face of the current public health crisis that we are not yet through, and of the need to chart a course back to economic prosperity, and to do so together. One of the things that gives me confidence in our ability to come together, Mr. Speaker, is the experience we have had over the last 7 months. The response of Cayman and its people to the COVID-19 crisis has been a source of considerable pride and inspiration for me, and I believe, Mr. Speaker, for many people. I think all who live and work in these islands should have those same feelings. The response of the community here, both in terms of a willingness to follow the rules the government moved swiftly to put in place, and in the way we have come together to look after each other, is a story we should be proud of. Just last week, again, we saw the community come together in response to a positive case, albeit weakly positive, at the Red Bay Primary School. Setting aside some initial panic caused unnecessarily by an online blog site, the school and education and public health officials all acted responsibly, professionally, and quickly to determine the facts and then to contain the situation. Thankfully, after some 207 tests were done of contacts and possible contacts, there have been no other positive cases found. I am glad the child and her family are well, and I wish them the very best to them, as well as to the many families now quarantined as a result of this incident. But it has served as a good reminder, Mr. Speaker, if we needed to be reminded, that we still need to be vigilant to avoid a serious outbreak and a return to strong measures. We do not want to go back there, Mr. Speaker. I do not want to go back there, and I'm sure none of us do. This government has made some tough decisions over the last 7 months. Tough decisions that have curtailed liberties and impacted the livelihoods of Caymanians and residents in ways that no one on these benches would ever have wanted to see happen in these islands. But it was those measures that have now allowed us to go about our lives in reasonable safety. In that context, Mr. Speaker, I must take this opportunity to thank my colleagues on the government side of the House for their steadfast support during this difficult time. I also want to thank members of the opposition for their support of the government's measures, both in their willingness to support the general effort and the steps that ministers have taken within their ministries. I believe this government has provided exemplary political leadership in a hugely difficult period in Cayman's history. Thanks to His Excellency the Governor and the official members of Cabinet for their support and the long hours of work they have put in to keep these islands safe. The Governor attended every one of the 65 or so press briefings that we have held since March. The Governor's office played a key role in obtaining necessary equipment and medicines, including the test kits that were such an important game changer for us. We could not have made it through the worst of the pandemic without the able assistance of the learned Attorney General, the Deputy Governor, Cabinet Secretary Samuel Rose, my Chief Officer Eric Bush, who oversaw curfew time and travel time, Employment and Border Control Chief Officer Wesley Howell, and their dedicated respective teams. Thanks are also due to all civil service leaders and staff who have adapted and reshaped the way they work to new demands and changing circumstances so that much-needed public services could be delivered through these times. This includes the stellar work done by the Ministry of Community Services, headed up by Teresa Echenike, and in particular the Needs Assessment Unit. They were at the forefront of much of the government's assistance to those in need and impacted by COVID. I should also acknowledge the tremendous work of the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education Services. Equally, the work of the Ministry of Tourism, led by Strand Borden, and the Department of Tourism, led by Rosa Harris. That work deserves recognition and appreciation. It is perhaps invidious to single out an individual amidst the collective effort of this magnitude, but I want to place on the public record my appreciation for the work of Chief Medical Officer Dr. John Lee. His clear and unflustered advice has been crucial to the Governor and I and fellow Cabinet members as we came to terms with the unfolding public health crisis. First, we were able to make timely decisions to intervene and close things down in a way that I believe has saved lives and maintained public health in these islands. Secondly, the quarantine and testing and tracing arrangements put in place from a standing start have been crucial in both containing community transmission and providing public reassurance. Clear political leadership was possible because of the quality of the advice we received from Dr. Lee and Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, the Medical Officer of Health Services, and their health colleagues, including those at Public Health England who supported Cayman. I believe the nation owes them all a debt, one I would like to acknowledge in this House today. Dr. Lee's appointment as an officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen is thoroughly well-deserved, and I congratulate him on this. I also congratulate Angela Tanzilo Swartz, Forensic DNA Specialist at the Health Services Authority, on her award of Honorary Member of the Order of the British Empire for her contribution to helping build Cayman's capacity and ability to carry out wide-scale testing. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate all those who were recognized for their contribution. I also thank the many who worked very hard to get us through the hardest days of the pandemic, and I want to recognize the capable efforts of the Commissioner of Police, Derek Byrne, and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, of Cayman Border Control, of Work, and the many other uniformed organizations that assisted. We must also recognize and thank the private sector and our generous charitable community for all they have done and are still doing to assist people in need during this time. Mr. Speaker, we continue to follow the best public health and scientific advice as we move now to carefully reopen Cayman and its economy to the outside world. The changes that came into place on the 1st of the month represent an important first step on the path back to a more normal relationship between Cayman and the rest of the world. As you have seen, we are acting cautiously and slowly. We hope further steps will be possible and have several initiatives being worked on that can be introduced when we are confident that we can do so safely. I will make a separate statement on the COVID-19 position during this meeting, Mr. Speaker. But for now, suffice it to say that the government recognizes that we must get the tourism sector moving again, but we will do so in a way that does not jeopardize the hard-won position we have now achieved. Getting tourism and the broader economy moving again, however, does not mean just turning back to the way things were before. This crisis has changed Cayman. It has changed the world. It has created an unprecedented economic shock. It has changed consumer behaviors. Things will not just spring back as they were. For all those reasons, Cayman now needs to think anew about its future and take the opportunity it gives us to rechart our path back to prosperity. The good news is that we are not starting from zero. The development sector is still doing well, and has helped jumpstart the domestic economy as we reopened, a very good indicator of the confidence in our islands. The financial services industry and its support ecosystem has carried on through the recent turmoil, if not uninterrupted, then certainly in strength. The task of government in respect of the financial services industry is twofold. First, we will continue our engagement with the European Union and building relationships in Brussels. Mr. Speaker, it feels to me that I have spent more time this term than anyone could have wanted traveling around Europe trying to persuade the EU of the bona fides of the financial services industry in Cayman, or traveling to the USA to reassure investors about the future of the jurisdiction. But this has been necessary and ultimately fruitful work. I know we were all pleased that earlier this month the European Union acknowledged the work we have done to further strengthen our regulatory regime regarding funds and removed us from their list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. This was a significant achievement, with all hands working over many months despite the pandemic. This work was greatly aided through our program of engagement, but the job does not end here. As we know, there will be other initiatives aimed at us, and we will be ready. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the partnership with the industry must continue and be strengthened. Government and industry have separate but complementary roles to play in keeping the sector strong. However, we must and will move forward in lockstep to secure the future of the financial services industry. The Minister for Financial Services has provided first-rate support through the process, and her work in partnership with the industry has been crucial in providing the European Union and others with the evidence of Cayman's commitment to the highest standards of international regulatory compliance. I thank the Minister for her hard work. Let me quickly add, Mr. Speaker, that while some may complain about the added requirements on a significant part of our funds in business, many in the sector believe that many benefits will accrue to these islands, not least of which is the possibility of additional jobs and opportunities for Caymanians. In addition, the economic substance rules require that appropriate businesses must have an adequate amount of operating expenditure incurred in these islands, have an adequate physical presence here, and have full-time qualified employees also located here. Also, the new requirement for annual audited financial statements for closed-ended funds will add to the work needing to be done here. All this means that the changes are creating new job opportunities for Caymanians, both directly in the financial services sector and indirectly as more money gets spent in our domestic economy. The other pillar of our economy, tourism, still has an important part to play in Cayman's future. It will recover, but it will recover slowly and unevenly. Both business economics and the ongoing public health concerns dictate that it will be stayover tourism that recovers here first. RB5, the road back to 500,000 air arrivals, the 3-year plan published by the Deputy Premier, charts a realistic course by which Cayman can in time recover to its pre-COVID position of 500,000 stayover visitors a year. I commend the clarity and thoughtfulness of the plan that he, his ministry team, and the industry itself have devised. Across government, we are working to make sure that the implementation of that plan can be achieved with minimum risk to Cayman's population. The key will be in the continued partnership with the industry to make sure Cayman's hotels, when they reopen to business, are COVID-secure locations, maintaining the highest standards. The government will give them the advice and support they need. The resort bubble is one solution that is being worked on to help restart tourism in a phased and careful manner, as is the Global Citizens Concierge program that will be launched shortly to attract longer-term visitors to live and work here. We're also in conversation with villa management companies as to how to allow visitors to stay in quarantine at what is effectively a self-contained villa. While we will continue to err on the side of caution as we reopen our borders, we understand that reopening Cayman successfully is required. We cannot stay closed indefinitely. While a successful reopening acknowledges that we will have some risk, we will take great pains to minimize the risk of an outbreak of the virus. Mr. Speaker, we will need to be flexible and responsive once the serious threat of COVID-19 is abated. We must make sure that we maximize the benefit from the visitors who do come to the islands. We must get them out of hotels and apartments and broadly spending money in our economy, from West Bay to East End and North Side, and over to the sister islands and all of the other districts in between. This offers real opportunities for Caymanians, and the plan proposes a new Visitor Experience Development Fund to help provide government funding and guidance to new business startups looking to exploit those opportunities. Inevitably, the opening of Grand Cayman to the cruise industry will take more time, and in my view, it will take time for consumer confidence to return to that industry in any case. We cannot expect the number of cruise visitors we have been used to. The government will therefore continue to offer both short-term help to those impacted by that reality and longer-term support in terms of retraining and small business support to create more opportunities for Caymanians. I have, throughout my time as Premier, spoken of the need to diversify the Caymanian economy. In particular, we need to embrace the opportunities offered by digital business and the knowledge economy. The government has made important steps in that direction. The framework of protections we created for intellectual property was a crucial step, and we have seen initiatives like Enterprise City and Tech Cayman attracting increasing numbers of new businesses to our shores as a result. The Virtual Assets Law, which this House passed in May, is another really important step forward. On the one hand, it is a significant regulatory provision to support the development of our financial services in the fast-moving world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. On the other hand, alongside the intellectual property regime, it opens the way for creative industries in Cayman to prosper. For young people looking to develop their interest in gaming or app development or music into a career, it offers them the chance to create digital content and receive safe payment here in Cayman. In the rapidly developing digital world, I believe Cayman's young people have the creativity to drive success. This government is providing both the legal frameworks they need and also the skills development and business support necessary to turn great ideas into viable income streams. In the face of this current crisis, I recognize that we now need a step change in our efforts on diversification. My government is willing to do more to support the location of knowledge-based business in the Cayman Islands. Discussions with the market leaders suggest that to attract and retain such businesses, Cayman needs to consider a third undersea communication cable to both increase capacity and improve resilience. Therefore, the government has sought expressions of interest in providing that third cable. I am determined, Mr. Speaker, that these developments, exciting as they are, must not just be about attracting overseas investment. Mr. Speaker, they must be about creating new opportunities for Caymanians. Those opportunities will come in two forms. First, the investment will create new jobs in the digital industries. We have recognized that if Caymanians are to be in the best possible position for employment in the jobs being created, then they need the best possible education and training to equip them in the new marketplace. The improvement of Cayman's public schools is a long haul, but this government has made good progress. I want to thank the Minister of Education for the strategic approach she has taken, which is tackling some of the long-standing problems that were revealed through the important work on baseline assessments carried out during the government's first term. Central to the strategy has been improving the quality of teaching. Investment has been made in training for our teachers, and salaries have been raised. The increases we have provided recognize the value of teachers in our society and also helps to attract and retain the best to teach in our schools. A testament to that was the special mention at the Clifton Hunter High School graduation this month of 3 students, Diamond Chambers, Joshua Pert, and Aaliyah Powell, for attaining top performance status and being named in the top 10 for the Caribbean region for their academic performance in external examinations in integrated science, human and social biology, and electronic document preparation and management. I congratulate these young graduates, their parents, and teachers on their outstanding achievements. The latest round of inspections of our public schools is recognizing the progress that has been made. High-quality teachers need to be teaching the right things. The education system needs to challenge students and support them to achieve. For that reason, a new curriculum has been introduced in Cayman's primary schools. That curriculum, based on that in place in England, expects more of our young people, but in doing so, gives them the education they need to be successful. Regrettably, the COVID crisis has delayed the further rollout of the new curriculum, but that will be the key priority for the coming year. The education system increasingly recognizes the need to individualize the experience as far as possible so that each student is supported to reach his or her potential. The system is one that promotes excellence but remains inclusive. The government has therefore also invested heavily in improving support for students with special needs so that no child is left behind. The disruption of recent months has also delayed the changes to school governance that the government wishes to bring forward. The key to maintaining the path toward excellence, the path that Cayman schools are on, lies in creating better accountability to ensure improved performance. New school governing bodies will provide an important new element in that system of accountability. Mr. Speaker, this is a new idea for Cayman, and while we can learn from elsewhere, we need to design the right school governance arrangements specifically for Cayman. The Minister has therefore delegated authority to the Education Council to develop and implement a pilot project during 2021. As well as jobs, Cayman's increasingly diversified economy will create business opportunities for Caymanians. The new digital industries require an extensive ecosystem of businesses to support them, which will provide new opportunities for Caymanian entrepreneurs to start or expand their enterprises. Through the last 7 months, the government has stepped up to extend the support available to small businesses. Financial support totaling $3 million has been made available as a grant to meet immediate needs. But in the longer term, access to the right advice and support is the most important factor in helping businesses to grow. The new Small Business Center is offering a one-stop shop center of excellence for businesses to find the advice and support they need. Also, a recent initiative has established a $5 million fund to provide additional grants for micro and small businesses. This second phase of grants will assist qualifying Caymanian micro and small businesses with wages, commercial rent, digital enablement, business continuity, and business process innovation. Micro businesses will be able to access up to $10,000 and small businesses packages up to $20,000. Those wishing to apply can find the information and application forms at www.cpiministry.gov.ky. I would like to thank the Minister of Commerce for the work his ministry has done, both to create a lifeline that meets the immediate needs of small businesses and to bring forward their plans and to open the new center ahead of schedule. Infrastructure provision by government will remain a key enabler of growth in the new Cayman economy. Despite the interruptions of the last few months, the government has made considerable progress on national infrastructure priorities. Work on the runway improvements and other enhancements in the airport development plan has continued apace. Work on short-term improvements on the highway network and the longer-term extension of the east-west arterial road has also progressed. With the problems of congestion re-emerging as the schools reopened, the completion of these much-needed improvements is crucial for the longer term. As I've said before, however, highway network expansion cannot be the only thing we rely on. Cayman needs a new approach to meet future transportation needs that does not just rely on private vehicles. Before the onset of COVID, the government was starting the work needed to identify the right public transport solution for these islands. This project was slowed during the lockdown, but the request for proposals will go out by the end of the month for a company to do the analysis and recommend a suitable solution or list of solutions for the government to consider and progress. A successful public transport system is also one plank of the climate change strategy that this House has agreed is necessary. What is clear, Mr. Speaker, is that the current changed circumstances offer Cayman the opportunity not just to devise a new strategy, but to take action that will benefit Cayman and contribute to reducing climate impacts. In addition to transportation, another good example is the scope we have to accelerate the delivery of the national energy policy that my previous administration devised. Two key actions stand out for their ability to genuinely move the dial on the policy's ambitions. In doing so, they will both also create new jobs and business opportunities for Caymanians in a similar way to that offered by the digital economy I spoke about earlier. The first is to reduce energy consumption by improving the energy efficiency of the existing building stock. The government needs to take responsibility for its footprint in this respect, and we are commissioning a series of energy audits for public sector buildings. The result will be a program of energy-saving measures that can be implemented in the future, achieving energy and financial savings. I want to see the same approach extended to private sector buildings in both the domestic and commercial property sectors. Government has a responsibility to support this work. Most obviously, some of the least energy efficient buildings are houses occupied by some of those least able to finance improvements to those buildings. The government will therefore look at the possibility of providing grants and incentives that do not just repair homes, but also improve the energy efficiency of them. These kinds of improvements will not just yield energy benefits. They will reduce the cost of living for poorer households, reduce fuel poverty, and help improve outcomes for health issues linked to poor housing. These types of programs create jobs in the retrofit sector. Energy-saving measures are relatively labor-intensive to implement, and therefore the impact on jobs could be potentially significant, provided these jobs are taken up by unemployed Caymanians. As much of the technology may be new to the islands, training and skills development would be required. The apprenticeship center at the Public Works Department and the trade schools operating on the island with the government support could rapidly expand to provide the necessary training places for Caymanians as part of our existing strategy to revise this country's approach to technical and vocational skills development. In short, Mr. Speaker, I believe there is the potential for Cayman to develop as a center of excellence in energy efficiency for the entire Caribbean region. The second energy policy initiative is to accelerate moves to more renewable energy in line with the 70% target in the national energy policy. Solar energy provides the swiftest and easiest path to achieving that target, and the government has welcomed CUC's announced plans to seek a partner in a further utility-scale solar project. We also believe that there is the potential to look afresh at the contribution of distributed networks. The experience with the core program gives us a place to start, but the experience globally has moved on, and new models have been developed from which we can learn. The government has therefore welcomed the governor's offer to seek expert technical support from the United Kingdom to move work in the renewable sector forward. Solar energy is not the only renewable energy source that we can utilize. The integrated solid waste management project that is being progressed by the government will generate electricity from incoming solid waste and landfill gases from the Georgetown landfill site once it has been capped and remediated. The primary purpose of the project is, of course, to achieve the closure of the existing landfill through alternative means of waste disposal. But in achieving that, the government is moving to an approach that utilizes waste as a resource rather than simply as garbage to be disposed of. I am delighted with the progress the contract negotiations are finally making. I must thank the Minister for Health and the Environment for his fortitude and perseverance in keeping the project moving forward. As we announced yesterday, early works contracts have been signed that will complete the capping of the existing area of completed landfill over the next year, and which will start the planning and environmental impact assessment work for the new plant. These are signature achievements of this government. The capping and remediation of the Georgetown landfill will also virtually eliminate fire risk and minimize the environmental impact of the site. Other important environmental programs being delivered thanks to this government include the massive extension to marine parks, new public parks and open spaces, and the designation of new protected conservation areas. Regrettably, these achievements got talked down during the public debate over the proposed cruise dock. I do not mean that just from a political standpoint. It is also regrettable that the hard work of many civil servants, community groups, charitable organizations, and individual members of the public who, for example, put their own time into helping bring open space into public use, got lost in that debate. I hope that the whole of Cayman will now be ready to acknowledge that work and that effort, as I do. I want to emphasize too, Mr. Speaker, that this is a government that will do all it can to support vulnerable Caymanians and those in need in our community. During the recent crisis, we have acted to provide additional support. The vital measures that we have put in place included a one-off payment of $425 to the disabled, seafarers, and veterans, and other persons in need who get financial assistance from government. Also, a one-off stipend of $600 was provided to taxi drivers and Caymanian tourism workers, and in subsequent months, all unemployed tourism-related workers received $1,000 per month. Over 200 musicians and artists also received support totaling $226,000. Assistance with health insurance costs from April through June, totaling over $419,000, was also provided to workers who had been furloughed, covering over 1,200 individuals, employees, and dependents. We also assisted individuals in the community with masks at a cost of over $131,000. With food security in mind, $1 million was provided to farmers to help buy feed and supplies. No one should be surprised, Mr. Speaker, by the extent of the help we have offered to our people. The government made it clear from the outset that we would stand up for the vulnerable and the needy. One of the first promises we kept was our commitment to raising the minimum income of our veterans and seafarers and those in need of welfare support. In our first budget, we raised that minimum income figure from $550 per month to $750 per month. We also extended that benefit to long-standing civil service pensioners in recognition not just of their need for help, but as a reward for their valuable service to this country. And we did not stop there, Mr. Speaker. In our budget presented to the House last year, we further increased the minimum income guarantee to $850 per month, effective January this year, with a further increase to $950 per month, expected in January of next year. As a result, Mr. Speaker, by the time this term is over, the income of over 2,000 Caymanians, most in need in our community, will have increased by approximately 73%. This is a government, Mr. Speaker, that looks after Caymanians and their families. It is also a government that looks after the national finances. We set out an ambitious delivery program for our term in office, but we also committed that we would achieve the objectives we had set while living within our means. In particular, we promised that we would deliver year-on-year surpluses. We would impose no new fees or duties on our people. We would pay down Cayman's debt, financing our investment priorities from operating surpluses. It is a source of regret that the events of recent months will cause us to break our strong record of sticking with those promises. The reduction in economic activity is impacting government revenues, while we have had to increase our spending to make the vital interventions to support businesses and families across these islands. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, we will not deliver a surplus in this our final year in office. Yet, despite that, remarkably, we will finish our term without needing to raise new fees or duties, and we hope without needing to resort to borrowing. Very simply, that is because of the extremely strong position that our public finances were in as we entered this year and this crisis. We have enough cash in the bank, we expect, to get us through the current difficulties. As at the 30th of September this year, the Cayman Islands Treasury held roughly $500 million in cash and deposits, representing operating cash and reserves and restricted cash. I must remind the House and the country, Mr. Speaker, that the cash we hold is only there because we achieved the financial strategy we committed ourselves to. It is the direct result of 7 years of successful financial management by this government and the previous administration. We have also secured a US $403 million line of credit, which is before this House for approval in this meeting, from a consortium of local banks, should it be necessary. That is the prudent thing to do so that we can access favorable terms now and do not have to go to the market in a weak position at the point of necessity. However, as I explained, when we announced that this arrangement had been secured, it is an insurance policy should be needed. In any case, on current projections, there should be no need to access the credit available before the latter part of next year, if at all. But I would add, Mr. Speaker, that the willingness of the market to offer credit on very favorable terms is yet another demonstration of confidence in this government and the country as a whole. Contrast this, Mr. Speaker, with that elsewhere in the world. As we sit here today, Cayman has taken its income reduction on the chin. We have provided considerable support for families and businesses, and our national debt has increased by zero. Not $1 has been borrowed. To take two other examples, in the same circumstances, National debt in the United Kingdom has increased by around £250 billion since this time last year and now exceeds £2 trillion, larger than the size of the UK economy. Meanwhile, in the US, the government has borrowed an eye-watering $3 trillion since the 1st of March. Cayman's position, Mr. Speaker, has not come about by accident. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, it is the direct result of this government's fiscal strategy. I must in particular pay tribute to the Minister of Finance. The country has been fortunate indeed to have a figure of his stature and experience at the helm at this time. His stewardship of the public purse has been nothing short of remarkable. Another accomplishment of the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is the arrangement between the government and 5 local banks to a government-guaranteed loan scheme that will provide up to 200 million Cayman Islands dollars to assist medium and large-sized businesses that are at least 60% Caymanian-owned, with meeting their operating and capital expenditure and refinancing their debt. Under the scheme, banks will consider applications for loans from eligible medium and large-sized businesses, where each medium and large-sized business can borrow up to $750,000 and $3 million, respectively. Decisions will be made solely by the banks and must satisfy all their usual credit approval and other requirements. The government will guarantee 50% or a total not to exceed $100 million of the loans granted as an additional incentive to have the banks loan money to our struggling businesses. Mr. Speaker, the House will also consider and vote on this scheme during this meeting. I promised earlier, Mr. Speaker, that I hope not to disappoint those expecting to hear about the government's achievements, but time is running short. There are a whole host of other achievements I do not have time to go into in detail, from establishing the new planned Cayman process to the improvements to the airport and runway, from finding new courtroom space to implementing the standards in public life law, from opening a new 25-meter competition swimming pool on the BRAC to providing new trucks to make garbage collection more reliable, from enhancements to our public beaches to celebrating Cayman. This government continues to deliver on the promises we made to the country when we came into office. It is a track record of achievement that I believe is unparalleled in Cayman's recent political history. I also promised to speak about the government's future plans. I have touched on many of those, from renewed economic growth to protecting the environment. Mr. Speaker, at the end of 8 years in office, well, almost 8 years in office, it might be expected that there would be a tired feeling attaching to this government. I can report to the House and to the country that I detect no such feeling in my colleagues. Far from proposing to rest on its laurels, this government remains ambitious for the future of our country. There is more left to do as the country moves forward from the current crisis. On these benches sit the people with the experience of delivery and the strength of vision to do it. This government has proven its ability to lead the country through crisis and adversity. On these benches sit the people who the country recognizes can provide the leadership to bring us back to prosperity. I thank all my colleagues, ministers and councillors for their hard work and dedication to the people of these islands. Next May, I will complete 2 consecutive terms as Premier and 20.5 years as a representative of my people. Although I will not be Premier again, I will stand for re-election in the constituents of Red Bay, and God and my constituents willing, I hope to continue to represent my people and assist in governing this country I love so very much following those elections. But more important than that by far is that I am confident that the man who has managed this country's finances during this term is more than up to the task of succeeding me as Premier. Next May, Mr. Speaker, the country has a really big decision to make. Does it retain its confidence in those whom it has seen deliver on the promises they have made, and who have set out a clear and important vision for the future of our country? Does it stick with those who 4 years ago committed themselves to put aside political differences in the national interests, and who have remained steadfast in that commitment? Or does it instead turn to a mismatched group of individuals who in the past 4 years have shown that the only thing that unites them is political ambition and political opportunism? No doubt beyond the official opposition, there are others already recruiting their committees and planning their campaigns against those on this side. We have heard many of them clogging the airwaves and social media platforms to spread their particular mixture of platitudes and misinformation. I have heard lots of talk, Mr. Speaker, but no solutions, nor indeed who they will work with to deliver for the Caymanian people. Going back, Mr. Speaker, to Ralph Waldo Emerson, with whose poem I began. In 1841, he gave a lecture in which he distinguished between the party of memory and the party of hope. So it is in Cayman today, Mr. Speaker. Some are lining up to stand in our forthcoming elections, essentially arguing that now is the time to wind back the clocks, to forget the commitment to growth and to improving life chances for Caymanians that has served us so well. Instead, they prefer to search for some mythical golden age that exists only in their rose-tinted remembrances. But theirs is a view of our future that stands on self-imposed limitations, created in memory and turned into a political program that distrusts our Caymanian ability to forge our own successful future. Its self-appointed leaders want to limit Cayman to some replay of their imagined past because they doubt Caymanians' capacity to achieve and to thrive in a future that is there to be grasped if we have the courage to do so. Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly reject that view. I am proud of Cayman's heritage. Next year, I am pleased we will be able to honor our seafaring tradition, not just on Heroes Day, but throughout the year. But we also celebrate our advancement as a people. The recent celebrations of 60 years of our coat of arms and our Constitution were about the achievements of our pioneers, but also about recognizing the progress we have made over the last 6 decades. The new constitutional order that hopefully will be made by the Privy Council in the next few weeks will give us another opportunity to celebrate and recognize our continued development. The Legislative Assembly Management Law, the new law for the autonomy of this House that we will debate during this meeting, is another important step in our maturity. Both these developments are important waymarkers to Cayman's future. Mr. Speaker, no one is more proud of Cayman's past than me, but I have no desire to live there again. I am honored to lead the Progressives, the party of progress, but I'm also privileged and honored to have led this national unity government over this term. Working together in the national interest through these toughest of times, we have retained our shared hope for the future. We have had challenges, and yes, we have had our differences along the way, but we have achieved much progress and created hope and confidence in Cayman's future by working together and staying together. Where the party of memory says Caymanians must have overweening protection to be successful, we say Caymanians need only full access to opportunity and then their inbuilt drive and determination will deliver success. Where they say our country should fear growth because we are surrendering to outside special interests, we say that growth comes by combining innovation and creativity of the Caymanian people with the knowledge, expertise, and financial clout that only comes here because we are bold and visionary. Where the party of memory would limit Cayman's place in the world to remaining 3 small islands adrift in global seas at the mercy of the winds of fortune, we offer the opportunity for Cayman to continue to grow, to punch well above our weight on the global stage, and to control our own future. Mr. Speaker, I do not know exactly what the future holds for Cayman, but there is a saying widely repeated in the tech industry that goes, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I believe that we have in our power now the ability to create a new future for our Cayman Islands. As this crisis passes, the years ahead will require us not to batten down the hatches, but to be bold and unfurl the sails. I have confidence and optimism in the future of our people. And Mr. Speaker, I have confidence that faced with the choice I have highlighted, the choice of regressive malaise versus the bold progress we offer, our people will return those on these benches for an effective third term, unprecedented in Cayman's political history.
And the one in the middle, don't forget the one in the middle.
And the one in the middle too. I thank you.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask a question under Standing Orders 32.
Continue, member for Georgetown Central, as the standing order says, short questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I only have one question, Mr. Speaker. Would it have hurt the Honorable Premier to recognize the 2 gentlemen who helped this country to help to negotiate, to agree with 200 coronavirus tests, Mr. Vernie Coe and Mr. Craig Merrin? Could they not have just acknowledged their involvement? We've given them awards to everybody else who are well and deserving, but the whole country knows these 2 gentlemen are the reasons why we have the tests available to test this country, and they won't even acknowledge it. They had an opportunity from a press release before, and the Premier has the big statement now. He could at least recognize them. They're one of our own. Would it have hurt him to do that?
Mr. Speaker, I am not going to get into an argument with the member who knows only what he's been told. Mr. Speaker, there is no question that the 2 gentlemen concerned were involved and did indeed make the initial contacts with respect to the testing process. And the government is most grateful for their involvement. I had no involvement whatsoever in the decision making to make awards about certificates and badges of honor. That is not a role for the Premier. I have myself certainly spoken to Vernie. I don't know if I've seen Craig since, and conveyed to them my personal thanks. I have thanked them from the podium at more than one press conference. I have been over this 3 or 4 times. So, Mr. Speaker, it is not correct to say that I or the government or indeed the governor has not publicly acknowledged the contribution of those gentlemen. So if I fail to do so specifically in this speech, it is because they have already been thanked by me personally more than once.
Next item. At this point, though, we have reached the hour of 4:30. Honorable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 so that the business of the House may continue beyond the hour of interruption.
Question is that the House continues after the hour of 4:30 p.m. All in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The House continues. Next item. Still on government statements, we have two, the Honorable Ministers of Finance and Planning. Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as required by Section 11(6) of the Public Management and Finance Law 2020 revision, or the PMFL, I make this statement to members of this Honourable House with respect to the exceptional circumstance transactions that were approved by Cabinet for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development during the 2020 financial year that ends on the 31st of December 2020. Such transactions were approved pursuant to Section 11(5) of the PMFL. Mr. Speaker, there are two financial transactions that Cabinet approved for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development pursuant to Section 11(5) of the PMFL. One, expenditure related to the response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and two, a temporary loan that the government made to the Cayman Islands Airport Authority, or CIAA. Turning first to the COVID-19 related expenditure. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the pandemic, government had to expeditiously implement a number of measures and plans that were aimed at eliminating the spread of the virus and ensuring the health and safety of the people of the Cayman Islands, mitigating the economic hardship on vulnerable individuals and businesses, and stimulating the local economy. The 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates and Appropriation Bill, which respectively were tabled and are to be presented in this Honourable House, includes $642 million in financial transactions, the majority of which are related to borrowing and expenditure with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, $6.5 million of the COVID-19 related expenditure that the Cabinet approved via Section 11(5) of the PMFL is appropriated under OE 140, COVID-19 Response and Recovery, under the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. The $6.5 million was used towards the cost of purchasing COVID-19 test kits, supplies and equipment, and meals and accommodation at isolation facilities. Mr. Speaker, turning now to the temporary loan that this government made to the CIAA. Mr. Speaker, the CIAA undertook a number of additional capital works in order to improve air traffic and ground traffic and congestion. These additional capital works included the strengthening and extension of the airport runway, the removal of the ponds, establishment of a proper perimeter road, and a small expansion to the general aviation terminal ramp in order to increase aircraft parking. The additional capital works began in February 2020, and in March 2020, the country went into full lockdown because of the pandemic. When the borders closed, scheduled commercial flights ceased, and the operating revenue of the CIAA was reduced to zero in one fell swoop, thus impacting the projected revenue that would have partially funded the additional capital works. In order to meet its ongoing operational costs, complete the capital projects, and maintain the required operational and capital reserves, the CIAA needed an additional $20.9 million in funding. With the approval of the Cabinet and the Public Procurement Committee, the CIAA awarded a tender to to First Caribbean International Bank, or FCIB, to finance a $20.9 million loan and overdraft facility. However, before the loan agreement with FCIB can be finalized, FCIB requires evidence that the CIAA has obtained authorization and approval for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, or FCDO. Mr. Speaker, as presented in the 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates and Appropriation Bill, and primarily due to the costs incurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government is forecast to possibly end the 2020 financial year with an operating deficit of some $168.7 million and cash reserves equivalent to 46.5 days of executive expenses. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the PMFL requires the government to maintain an operating surplus and cash days equivalent to 90 days of executive expenses. As a result of these breaches of the PMFL, government is now required to present to the FCDO, from the point at which the breach is forecast to occur, a plan on how the government will become compliant over the next 3 financial years, or such longer period that may be agreed with the FCDO. The approval of the FCDO is also required before the government can undertake a number of transactions, including any refinancing of public debt or any public borrowing, which includes FCIB loan to the CIAA. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Development intends to seek approval of the FCDO for a compliance plan and the FCIB loan to the CIAA for $20.9 million, but this will not be completed until later in the year, by the 31st of December 2020. The CIAA indicated that it could not wait until that period, until this 31st of December, as it was due to exhaust all of its banking account balances by the 30th of December 2020. The only practical way, Mr. Speaker, that the government could assist the CIAA with meeting its operating and financial obligations was for the Cabinet to grant a temporary loan of $20.9 million interest-free. The Cabinet approved $5 million of the $20.9 million loan via Section 11.5 of the PMFL in order to prevent the CIAA from running out of cash before the 30th of September 2020. The balance of the loan, $15.9 million, is included in the 2010-20 Supplementary Plan and Estimates under LM13, Cayman Islands Airport Authority appropriation for approval by this Legislative Assembly via Section 25 of the PMFL. Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that the $20.9 million loan to the CIAA will be repaid to the government in full as soon as the approval of the FCDO is obtained and the CIAA can draw down on the loan funds from the as soon as the CIAA can draw down on the loan funds from FCIB, which is estimated to be on or before the 31st of December 2020. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I thank you for allowing me to explain the exceptional circumstance transactions which were approved by the Cabinet for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development for the 2020 financial year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Planning, Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement as to the exceptional circumstances and reasons why the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, CPI, had to request an increase in expenditure in the 2020 budget under Section 11.5 of the Public Management and Finance Law 2020 revision. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to arrest the disruption caused by COVID-19 to micro and small businesses in the Cayman Islands, the Ministry of CPI proposed to Cabinet a number of relief measures for these businesses. These relief measures were the low-interest loan program, which was administered through the Cayman Islands Development Bank, and the Micro and Small Business Grant Program, Technical Assistance Program, and Training and Hand-Holding Program administered by the newly established Cayman Islands Center for Business Development. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet granted approval for CI $9 million for the Micro and Small Business Grants Program, $500,000 for the Technical Assistance Program, and $21,000 for the Training and Hand-Holding Program. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of CPI received an increased appropriation in the amount of CI $9,521,000 to TP80 support for business initiatives for these programs. Mr. Speaker, the Center was initially established to improve small business viability across our islands through advocacy, professional business counseling, technical training and assistance, with gaining access to finance. These services were intended to be long-term, relationship-based, and involve programs of development which were anticipated to feed directly into the economic growth. Mr. Speaker, while the Center had been established to support small businesses in general, the Center virtually opened in March to respond to the immediate needs of business amid the global pandemic, primarily focusing on the coordination of these relief measures. The Micro and Small Business Grant Program targeted 3,000 vulnerable micro and small businesses, and was intended to provide assistance of $1,000 monthly for 3 months to those who qualified. The objectives of the program was to provide working capital assistance to the businesses affected by COVID-19, which had enough of a domestic market to render the business recoverable, and to aid in the repurposing and transitioning of businesses that had a large tourist market and demonstrated the ability to transition to a larger domestic market. To be eligible as at 1st March 2020, businesses must have been operational for at least 12 months, must have met the definition of micro and small businesses as per the Trade and Business License Law, and evidenced COVID-19 related increase in receivables and or decrease in sales as at March 2020. The Technical Assistance Program involved paid qualified accountants and other professionals to provide technical guidance and coaching to micro and small businesses to help them navigate this difficult period and keeping their financial obligations to financial institutions. The program was directed particularly at recovery from COVID, and technical assistance would be provided for 1 year initially. The program of assistance included document preparation to access financing, grants, or other stimulus products, preparation of business plans and strategic plans, monitoring business performance against targets, business model design and innovation, financial modeling, forecasting, scenario analysis, business impact analysis, and HR services. This assistance took the form of one-on-one consultation and coaching sessions with clients. Mr. Speaker, all beneficiaries of the low-interest loan program administered by the Cayman Islands Development Bank had to undergo training and hand-holding with the Center for Business Development and one-on-one consultations with the technical assistants. Other training sessions were available to business owners as these needs were assessed. The Center conducted 6 training webinars during the period of the shelter-in-place arrangements, with almost 400 persons in attendance. The sessions covered the following topics: business strategy, managing your finances in a crisis, moving your business online, managing market risk during COVID-19, managing financial risks during COVID-19, and managing cash flows in a crisis. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the Center is an acknowledgement by this government of the importance of small businesses here in these islands. The global pandemic has made the Center's mandate of improving and proving the economic value of small businesses in the islands even more urgent. Since the launch of the relief measures in April, 1,540 applications have been received under the Micro and Small Grants Program. A total of $3.4 million have been paid out to applicants, with the total funds committed by the government being $4.3. The team of technical assistants have worked with 44 micro and small businesses to prepare them to access the low-interest loan program under the Technical Assistance Program. A further 15 applications are awaiting their review. In an effort to provide a more targeted approach to business development, Cabinet recently approved using the remaining micro and small business grants program funds for a medium-term economic package to the sector, which will benefit a minimum of 300 businesses that are assessed as competitive post-COVID-19. The program will seek to identify and support resilient, innovative businesses with high growth potential, businesses with a likelihood to not only survive but thrive beyond the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the new phase of support for micro and small businesses will involve packaged opportunities that will cover wage, digital enhancement, commercial rent assistance, business process innovation grants, and customized business continuity. Micro businesses will be able to access packages not exceeding $10,000, while small businesses may access packages up to $20,000. Mr. Speaker, there are specific eligibility criteria for assistance for the various support packages, but overall criteria to access support for the government programs are up-to-date trade and business license, must meet the definition of micro and small business as per the trade and business license law. Applicants must have a domestic market or is moving towards a domestic market. As at March 1st, 2020, businesses must have been operational for at least 12 months. There must be evidence of COVID-19 related increases in receivables and or decreases in sales. Business must be at least 60% Caymanian owned, and business must be a going concern. Providing these packages to businesses to support wages, training, productivity improvement, and the development of new products and services will help many of them to avoid closure. Additionally, enabling them to incorporate a digital presence as a part of their business model will assist to diversify their markets so that they can become more efficient. I just wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, that the deadline for application for these grants was last Friday. We have extended that to midnight this Friday, the 16th. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Center for Business Development, located at Baytown Plaza on West Bay Road, was officially opened on the 1st of September 2020. One of government's major strategic priorities is supporting entrepreneurship, harnessing the creativity of Caymanians to build innovative and sustainable businesses so as to increase global competitiveness. Mr. Speaker, with the opening of this center, we are able to realize this goal with space that will integrate offices for business advisors, training rooms, and a residential business incubator that will house up to 12 startups for a period of 2 years free of charge to them. Mr. Speaker, as we chart our path through difficult waters in the coming months, the government will use the center and its strategic partners to ensure that the small business sector emerges strong and becomes one, if not, the major driving force behind the island's economy going forward. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to express a debt of gratitude to the Honorable Premier, my colleagues in Cabinet, and others who have been supportive of this initiative. Tremendous benefits to Caymanians and our 3 islands will result from the work of the Center for Business Development for many years to come. And we look forward to the future with confidence and optimism and great anticipation of its continued success. Mr. Speaker, the aforementioned exceptional circumstance transactions, which were approved by Cabinet for the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure during 2020 financial period, did not cause any non-compliance with the principles of responsible financial management. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the House for their continued support. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker. May God bless these Cayman Islands.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
The member for
Bordentown West.
Bordentown West.
Mr. Speaker, I actually like the fact that you don't quite remember the address. It means
Yes,
you haven't spent that much
yes.
time campaigning there. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise on the standing order 32, just to ask the Minister just one question on his statement.
Permission granted, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, I noticed on page 6 he had announced that since the launch of the relief measures in April, 1,540 applications were received. I'm just curious, Mr. Speaker, of that 1,540 applications that were received, how many were actually successful? Because I noticed when it goes on to read, it was saying something about 44 businesses being helped and 15 under consideration. So I know that couldn't be 59 of the 1,540. So I just want a little bit of clarification on that amount. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, I don't have that detail, but I also just want to point out that the second numbers that you mentioned, those were the persons that were receiving technical support, yes. And the first number was the application for the grants, but the director's on her way and I'll be able to provide you with the number in a few minutes.
Thanks, thanks to the Honorable Minister, Mr. Speaker. We can wait on the answer. I just wanted to just get an idea of that amount. Thanks.
Personal explanations,
None.
obituary and other ceremonial speeches,
None.
raising a matter of privileges,
None.
government business.
Go back. Yes, yes. Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated to you, an honorable leader of the opposition this morning, the government wishes to proceed first with the important motion regarding the government guaranteed loan scheme for medium and large sized businesses, so that, assuming we have the approval of the House, the government can go ahead and issue the necessary guarantees to the banks so that business owners may be able to benefit from the loan scheme as quickly as possible. Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of members of the House and the broader public, Standing Order 14.1 provides that the business of each sitting, other than the first sitting of a session, shall be transacted in the following order: prayers, administration of oaths or affirmation, reading by the presiding officer of messages and announcements, presentation of petitions, and on, as the clerk has just done. But it provides in Standing Order 14.1I that under government business, bills should proceed before motions. And so, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I wish to move the suspension of Standing Order 14.1 in order that the business of the day may be rearranged so that the government may take Government Motion Number 4 of 2021, Government Guaranteed Loan Scheme for Medium and Large Sized Businesses, in advance of proceeding with the first readings of the bills which appear on the order paper. And I so move.
Question is that Standing Order 14.1 be suspended in order to take Government Motion Number 4. All in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. We move to Government Motion Number 4.
Government Motion Number 4 of 2020-2021, Government Guaranteed Loan Scheme for Medium and Large Sized Businesses, to remove the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable Minister of Finance.
I'll go watch it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move government motion number 4 of 2020-2021 entitled Government Guaranteed Loan Scheme for Medium and Large Size Businesses, and which reads as follows. Whereas, resulting from the contraction of the local economy and the loss of revenue due to COVID-19, the government has approved a government guaranteed loan scheme that facilitates loans through participating local financial institutions to qualifying medium and large size businesses for the purpose of meeting operating and capital expenditure and refinancing debt. A medium-sized business is defined as a business employing from 13 to 15 employees or has gross revenue greater than $750,000 up to $5 million. A large-sized business is defined as a business employing over 50 employees or has gross revenues over $5 million. In order to be eligible for a loan under the scheme, businesses must be at least 60% Caymanian owned, be a Cayman registered company on the 22nd of March 2020, have 13 or more employees at the 22nd of March 2020, and be in good credit standing. And Mr. Speaker, the significance of the March 22nd date is that that is the date in which we went into full lockdown. The maximum that each medium and large sized business can borrow is up to $750,000 and $3 million respectively. The interest rate will be variable at the prevailing CI dollar or US dollar prime rate plus a margin of up to 1.5%. The current CI dollar and US dollar prime rate is 3.25%. The participating local financial institutions will also charge the usual application, commitment, legal fees, and require businesses to obtain insurance in a sum equal to, at least equal to the loan amount. The maximum repayment period, Mr. Speaker, including a 12-month repayment moratorium period, is 7 years, and businesses will have up to 1 year to apply for the loan. The maximum duration of the government loan guarantee is for the duration of the loan, which is 7 years, and the government will waive the 1 to 1.5% stamp duty that would be applicable on the new portion of the loans. And whereas the government seeks to guarantee 50% or a maximum of $100 million of the loan scheme limit of CI $200 million, and whereas the following local financial institutions have agreed to lend up to a maximum of CI $200 million of the sought government guaranteed loan scheme to medium and large sized businesses: Butterfield Bank, Cayman Limited, Cayman National Bank Limited, First Caribbean International Bank, Cayman Limited, RBC Royal Bank, Cayman Limited, and Scotiabank and Trust, Cayman Limited. And whereas Section 8 of the Public Management and Finance Law 2020 revision states that as a general rule, no guarantee may be given by or on behalf of the government unless it has been authorized by a resolution of the Legislative Assembly. Be it therefore resolved that a government guarantee for the government guaranteed loan scheme for medium and large sized businesses be approved as follows: a blanket guarantee for 7 years of 50% of the maximum loan scheme limit of $200 million, which is equivalent to $100 million. The government to guarantee 50% of the loans which are not to exceed a total of $200 million to the following local financial institutions: Butterfield Bank, Cayman Limited, Cayman National Bank Limited, First Caribbean International Bank, Cayman Limited, RBC Royal Bank, Cayman Limited, Scotiabank and Trust, Cayman Limited, and such other local financial institution as considered suitable by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development, and that the guarantee shall be signed by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development on behalf of the Cayman Islands, the government of the Cayman Islands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question is, be it therefore resolved that a government guarantee for the government guaranteed loan scheme for medium and large size businesses be approved as follows. A blanket guarantee for 7 years of 50% of the maximum loan scheme limit of 200 million Cayman Islands dollars, which is equivalent to 100 million Cayman Islands dollars. B, the government to guarantee 50% of the loans which are not to exceed a total of 200 million Cayman Islands dollars to the following local financial institutions. 1, Butterfield Bank Cayman Limited. 2, Cayman National Bank Limited. 3, First Caribbean International Bank Cayman Limited. 4, RBC Royal Bank Cayman Limited. 5, Scotia Bank and Trust Cayman Limited. And 6, such other local financial institution as considered suitable by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development. And C, that the guarantees shall be signed by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development on behalf of the government of the Cayman Islands. Honorable Minister. No. B, if you're questioning what I was reading, B, under the resolved section, the government to guarantee 50% of the loans which are not to exceed a total of 200 million Cayman Islands dollars to the following local financial institutions. That's what is contained in the resolution. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly to the motion itself. Mr. Speaker, following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March of this year, government received a number of requests for financial assistance from the local business community, particularly those who serve and operate in the hospitality industry, having seen their businesses go from full throttle to no throttle in a very short period. And acknowledging this need, government recognized that it would not be in a position to make the significant loans and assistance that businesses were starting to seek from us. And that government would not be in a position to make significant loans directly to medium and larger businesses, given the significant decline in revenues it was facing itself and the corresponding increases in expenditures in combating the pandemic. We therefore sought to partner to establish a program in partnership with the local financial institutions to develop a program along the lines of the very successful government guaranteed home mortgage scheme that has been in place for many years and make this available to Caymanian-owned businesses. Mr. Speaker, this program seeks to provide government assistance by way of a government guarantee to those businesses not covered by the very successful small and micro business assistance programs developed by the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure and managed by the Small Business Development Center that Minister for Commerce and Planning and Infrastructure spoke to just previously. Taken together, Mr. Speaker, the programs ensure that government assistance is made available to all Caymanian-owned businesses across the spectrum of the business community here in Cayman. Following approval from Cabinet, negotiations commenced between the Ministry of Finance and the local financial institutions, and they concluded early last month. I wish to acknowledge and to publicly thank all of the banks who agreed to participate in the program. I also want to thank the CEO of the Bankers Association, Mr. Richard Lewis, for his involvement in coordinating and facilitating negotiations with the participating financial institutions. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I must acknowledge and thank the Financial Secretary and his team for all of their efforts, together with our legal advisors from the Attorney General's chambers. They have worked tirelessly to bring us to this point. Mr. Speaker, the motion itself is extremely detailed, and it provides all of the key terms and conditions of the scheme that we are proposing to enter into. I therefore believe that honourable members have all the required information needed to consider the merits of the scheme, and I respectfully ask for their support of the government motion, which will provide much needed relief for the medium and large-sized businesses in the Cayman Islands. I commend this motion to this entire House, and I know that the business community will benefit significantly from it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Bordentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, and I rise to give the view of the official opposition in this regard. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, first of all, is that my colleagues in the official opposition is supportive of this initiative in its concept. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we believe that we have to take some measures to help the business community, because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, our economy is one of the pillars of our society, and the businesses have a responsibility in the production and the distribution of goods and services, and we as the people are the consumers of those goods and services. So ultimately, we do need the business community. They also employ people, and they also have families and everyone. So we do need to make some initiative. Give credit where credit is due, Mr. Speaker, and listening to the Premier's statement on the nation, I'm happy that our country's finances are in this position that we can actually do help a lot of people. And I also want to recognize you, Mr. Speaker, because even the turnaround in the government finances actually started with you when you were Minister of Finance. So I wanted to at least give you your credit also in that regard, Mr. Speaker. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, just looking at the motion itself, that we wanted to be clear on, and hopefully the Minister of Finance can touch on it. One second. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, one of the things that we just want to touch on when the Minister goes to wind up on his thing, maybe he can answer the question. One of the results that we had an issue with is Section 6 that says such other local financial institution as considered suitable by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development. That one, Mr. Speaker, I think that needs to be a little bit tightened up where we refer to financial institution as regulated by SEMA. And the reason why I raise that, Mr. Speaker, is that we don't want a situation where we have entities out there actually doing bad loans or giving out bad loans. And one of the things I am concerned about is that while I do accept that some flexibility is needed, because the truth of the fact is, Mr. Speaker, some of the banks that are on this list, I think they're just probably here for sure. I don't think they're going to do anything for much people, to be honest with you. And I think at the end of the day, we need to have some flexibility to make sure that businesses who genuinely need help can actually get the help. Because some of the requirements that these banks ask of people, it is almost as if though you have to prove you don't need the money before you can actually get the money. So it is from that standpoint, if the true initiative here is to help people, then I think we need to have some flexibility. When I look at other local financial institutions, I don't know what the credit union position is, but at a minimum, it would be nice if they're also included. I definitely wouldn't want Jamaica National inside it because they're a little bunch of crooks. This is Parliament. I can speak my thing there. Because some of the banks on these lists, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you straight up, I've done enough to take Caymanians out of their homes, and I don't see them looking to help people in terms of businesses and everything else. And from speaking to some of them when this initiative was first announced, I can tell you I am not overly optimistic that many of them are actually going to do anything to help people, and I'm just being honest. So I think at the end of the day, we ultimately, as the political leaders of this country, need to make sure that if businesses genuinely need help, that they can get the help that they need. And that's the reason why, as much as number 6 is a bit broad, I would still like, I guess, be tightened up a little bit in terms of entities that are at least regulated, just to make sure that we still have some lending standards or anything else. So, I mean, I'm just have to put that out there, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that my colleagues and I would also like to mention or to ask the minister to consider is that these businesses, that when they do get assistance from these financial institutions, where the people of the Cayman Islands is guaranteeing 50% of the loan, is that we also need some guarantee that the Caymanian staff that are there aren't the ones that are laid off or they're basically kept on staff and everything else. What we don't want is for them to get the money and then turn around and start laying off people because things turn down later on down the road. After several months down, people just get laid off again too. So at a minimum, even though that there is a requirement for it has to be a certain number of Caymanians, is that the Caymanians stay employed during that time and not where they get the money and then Caymanians turn around and lose their jobs, because that is not the purpose or intention of this motion. So those are the kind of things that we just want to tighten up. But overall, Mr. Speaker, we are in support of the motion in concept. We believe that the businesses need help. And at the end of the day, I will ask the government also to kind of monitor this on a regular basis. Because from what I understand is that most of the banks will be focusing on their existing clients or their existing business clients, and they're not be too keen on helping some client from another bank either. That's the impression I got from speaking to some of them. I won't say who, but I mean, just putting that out there. So from that standpoint, Mr. Speaker, we just want to make sure that at a minimum, the government stays on top of this, get at least reports from the banks in terms of who applied under the scheme and if they were successful or unsuccessful. Because I understand it is only those that are actually successful will be sent to the government as a part of guarantee. So at a minimum, we need some visibility on who is probably turned down, and maybe we can probably look at something else. What I would also ask the government to consider, Mr. Speaker, depends on how it turns out, to see if there's any need or anything that we can probably do to capitalize or help Cayman Islands Development Bank to probably assist some businesses. Because the truth of the fact is, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you understanding how banks operate and their appetite for risk, is that a lot of business still going to struggle to qualify in a normal banking situation. And even despite getting a 12-month reprieve in payment, it's still going to be challenging. And ultimately, we want to make sure that businesses actually get the help. So with that, Mr. Speaker, like I said, we are in support of the concept. We think that the businesses need the support of the government and the people at this point. Other countries are doing it, and I'm glad that we're in a position that we can also help. But at the same time, we just want to make sure that some of these banks are not just paying lip service to this initiative, and that they generally want to help businesses. And that's what I just need to make sure of, and just tighten up in terms of the other financial institutions to make sure that they are regulated and that they at least have some level of credit checks or credit history in terms of applying that. But other than that, we in official opposition supports the motion, and whatever we can do to help the government, we'll do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? A member for Northside.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too wish to offer my support, but I have a number of questions that my support is conditional on. First question is, what is the purpose of this guarantee if these businesses are in good standing with their bank? Why can't they not get the financing from the banks? Secondly, the disparity between the 9 million for small businesses in Cayman, which are mostly 100% Caymanian owned, to 200 million for 60% Caymanian owned businesses worries me. I think that why can't the small businesses have access to some of this guaranteed loan money as well, if they so qualify, or young entrepreneurs coming forward who want to start new businesses and can present a proper business case to the bank, have access to this, and not just the established big businesses who, if they were as prudent as government, or as the premier said the government has been, should have some reserves which they can lean on in order to weather this. Is this being limited to businesses? Who are the businesses that can qualify for this? Is it being limited to businesses that were directly affected by the COVID shutdown and can demonstrate that the reason they need this money, this guarantee loan, is because the reduction in income is a problem due to the lockdown, and not just some big business out there that has been mismanaged and is now going to be bailed out by government because they didn't manage the business properly and still have their income streams intact. And I don't understand why it's for 60% Cayman ownership. We know that many of us believe that that's just a fronting operation when you see these businesses that claim to be 60% Caymanian ownership. But there's all kinds of side agreements behind the back that the Caymanian is getting some little pittance of $2,500 a month, and the 40% shareholders walking away with millions of dollars of profit a year. This should be an opportunity for the Caymanian, who is a 60% shareholder, to use this money to buy out the other 40%, make the business be 100% Caymanian. Because if the business is going to fail for the 40% foreign owner, it is an opportunity for the Caymanian to buy him out and take over the business. And I believe that's in favor of long-term Caymanian benefit. Again, I don't understand why the government is waiving its pittance and fees, but the banks are not waiving their fees. Because if their fees is the standard 1% of the amount borrowed, and you're borrowing $750,000, that's substantial to what they would save in the government fees. But the biggest concern of mine, nowhere in this guarantee that we're putting forward for these businesses does government appear to be getting any security for the loan section that they guarantee. At a minimum, if the bank is requiring the businesses to have insurance, government should be named as a beneficiary of the insurance, at least to the portion that it is being guaranteed. Or we don't want another Michael Ryan fiasco where these people can get this money in a company name, the 60% owned Caymanian, make the company run bankrupt, and it's the company that got the money. There's no security for government, and the people walk away with the funds. Secondly, I'm wondering about who is going to approve the Caymanians who are getting this loan, because most of the so-called A-class banks here now, you can't buy a checkbook unless it's approved in Bahamas, Trinidad, or some other country, because they're now operating as agents of bank as opposed to A-class banks. I mean, the reduction in service at Royal Bank since Harry Chisholm left is horrendous to the people. They don't even have a line for senior citizens anymore. But every bank statement you get, their charges go up. So I would want to know that there's going to be some local control over these loans, and that it's not going to be granted entirely in some foreign country over which we don't have any jurisdiction at all as to who gets it. I also would like to see a caveat put in the loan guarantee that they have to retain their Caymanian staff unless they can demonstrate cause, i.e. non-performance or stealing or something ridiculous where they get rid of Caymanian. Because we know what's happening out there is that they're keeping on the work permit people and letting go the Caymanians. So, Mr. Speaker, if the Premier in waiting and Minister of Finance can answer those questions to my satisfaction, I'll vote for the bill. Otherwise, I am not. I think it was a great announcement. I think so. I will vote for the bill without my concerns being explained to me. My vote will be no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you told me that 1 year ago that we would be here today doing this, I wouldn't have believed you. But as the Honorable Premier pointed out in his statement just a few minutes ago, these are unprecedented times and challenges for this country. While I'm in accord with a lot of what he said, except for the last bit, the campaign part. But I do recognize that, these are times that will test all of us, and we have to press forward, be creative, and be resolved to helping as much as we can. As the member from Bordentown West said, Mr. Speaker, the opposition, of course, supports this initiative in principle. And my colleague from Bordentown West did point out one concern that I had picked up on as well, which was in the resolve section of this motion where it said that such other local financial institution is considered by the Minister for Finance and Economic Development. Just in terms of this legislature giving a stamp of approval for these guarantees, I'm a bit uncomfortable with that wording, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to see some attempt made to tighten that up. Not that I don't trust the Honorable Minister of Finance, but when the legislature is being asked to endorse this, I don't like to see things left so open-ended. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, thinking back to the Premier's previous statement, the opposition has been very much involved in what has been going on the ground in our constituencies from the start of this pandemic. And we have been spending a lot of time with our constituents and those business owners and so on who are affected by the pandemic. And we do get a lot of feedback and suggestions and requests from those constituents. And in anticipation of coming here today to deal with this motion, I decided I would actually publish a survey, which I find very useful in these times, to back up some of what I'm going to say today here on this motion. Because what we don't want to do is to make decisions based on certain assumptions. One thing that has come back to me, and this isn't really from the business owners, but from my constituents, Mr. Speaker, and it's something that I want to highlight here, because when we look at the requirements to be eligible for a loan under this scheme, what I see a lot of good things there, but what I see missing is something that has been coming back to me quite a bit, and it is some companies, whether it be because of the pandemic and being in a state of panic or whatever other reason, are starting to try to find ways to circumvent the laws. And I have had many constituents come to me concerned that, one, they've been made redundant unlawfully, illegally, that they've been pushed out of paying jobs while work permit holders have been retained. There have been a lot of concerns about pensions with employers who have not contributed to pension plans. There's been a lot of things that have been uprooted and highlighted by this pandemic. And while businesses are under pressure and under strain, so too are those employees or ex-employees. So what I don't want to do, Mr. Speaker, is encourage the government to implement a system that may unintentionally reward bad employers. What I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, is that we add, if he would consider amending this motion, to add under the eligibility criteria is for the business to be in good standing with the Work Department and the Department of Labor and Pensions. That way I would have a bit more comfort in knowing that those businesses who treat our people well are going to be treated well in return. Mr. Speaker, in leading on from that thought, I also think in making some inquiries and in having discussions that the Department of Labor and Pensions, despite their best efforts and despite the government's best efforts to support them, are not going to be resourced sufficiently to deal with the number of complaints that I suspect have either gone in already or will be coming in. I had the opportunity to speak to a constituent of mine just this week, Mr. Speaker, who was made redundant by her employer. And I won't name the company. I'm hoping that they can resolve the situation without too much happening. But that individual was a salesperson, and she was made redundant while that company maintained quite a number of work permits for salespeople. Now, I understand that everybody wants to work and everybody wants to earn a living, but I was put here by that constituent and many others like her. And when I see what she has gone through in the past few months, just trying to get legal representation to defend her position of her right to be able to work in her own country, I really have concerns about how some businesses are operating. I've also spoken to another person who talked about some of the issues he had because he's a small business operator. And while he was grateful for the efforts the government made to provide grants and loans to small businesses, he experienced, and he's not the only one, experienced a lot of difficulty in going through the application process, Mr. Speaker. And eventually he abandoned the process because, one, he was so caught up with his business and trying to keep that going, and also he didn't think that the end result would have been worth the effort. And I know that sounds a bit misguided, Mr. Speaker, on the surface, but when you drill down into it, and he explained it to me, he has a water sports business. And he said to me, okay, I'm going through all this red tape and application process and all these requirements to get maybe $50,000 loan to my business. And at the end of the day, one boat engine could cost me $50,000. So he didn't think that what he had to go through to make the application was worth what was coming at the end. Now, I know that you could argue with that and say what every little bit counts, but in his mind, it was, not worth the effort. And I don't know personally how onerous the application process is, Mr. Speaker, but maybe we could look at improving that somehow so that small business owners don't have to feel those pains. I know a lot of companies have had to go and resource people to make those applications for them and put together all the paperwork, documentation. At the same time, they're trying to figure out how to pay employees and keep their business going. A lot of them have no income. So, Mr. Speaker, a number of small businesses have already closed their doors. I know there's not much that can be done for those businesses, but we have to bear in mind too that those employees and employers are now out of work and needing help. We've always said it, Mr. Speaker, that small businesses are the engine of this economy. In some sense, they provide a lot of employment collectively. So I don't want to forget about their plight. And I agree with the member from Northside. I think we need to find a way to include them, the small businesses, in this. Mr. Speaker, I also do have concerns about the pandemic itself and the ability of those who are going to be participating in this scheme to service those arrangements. And I noticed that there's a 1-year period where they won't have to make payments. But this is all pretty much hanging on the availability of a vaccine. And when you think about that, that is a risky undertaking because we don't know when there will be a vaccine. We're hopeful that there will be soon. But I did some calculations on the potential payments and so on. And, for $3 million, you're looking at just about $42,000 a month. That's a lot of money, especially at a time when revenues are down. So maybe we could look at somehow, and I say this and I hesitate because lowering those payments somehow. And the member from Northside talked about reducing some of the initial costs. That might help, or maybe extending the period. I know we can't do much with interest rates. But Mr. Speaker, before I sit, I just want to, because I'm talking about the plight of, the employees and the employers in the small businesses. In my survey that I sent out, I actually got, between yesterday and today, I got 49 responses. And I'll quickly go through the questions. It's a short survey. The first one was, how many employees do you have? And in the category of 1 to 5, 81% of those businesses had between 1 and 5 employees. 10% had between 6 and 10 employees. 6% had between 11 and 15, and 2% had more than 15. So these are all in the small business, just about small business category. The range of industries that they were involved in was from tourism, retail, financial services, wholesale, construction, real estate, restaurant, healthcare, gym and fitness, news media. And I also asked the question, sorry, Mr. Speaker, what percentage of their annual revenue comes from government contracts? Which isn't that relevant right now, but sorry, that page actually seems to have dropped off. The primary line of business, services, 65% was services, 20% was goods, 14% was a mixture of both. And then the main question, Mr. Speaker, was what impact has COVID-19 had on the following areas? And in the ability to perform contracts, 38% experienced a major impact, 12% considerable, 16% were neutral, 20% had some impact, 12% had no impact. Availability of workforce, 24% major impact, 20% considerable, 12% neutral, 24% some impact, 18% no impact. Cost of materials, major impact, 10%, considerable impact, 16%, neutral, 34%, some impact, 22%, no impact, 16%. Availability of materials, 14% major impact, 10% considerable impact, 22% neutral, some impact, 32%, no impact, 20%. Confidence in supply chain, shipping, customs, etc., 26% major impact, considerable impact was only 2%, 18% were neutral, some impact, 28%, no impact, 24%. Ability to access secure work accommodations, there was no issue there, 42% said no impact, major impact was 8%. Revenue expectations, and this is the one that jumped out at me, 53% said major impact on revenue, 24% considerable impact, so you're already up to over 70%, 6% neutral, 16% some impact, 0 said no impact. Access to capital, again, similar picture. Major impact, 53%, considerable impact, 10%, neutral was 14%, some impact, 10%, no impact, 12%. Access to government services, 20%, major impact, 8%, no impact, considerable impact, 24% neutral, some impact, 26%, no impact, 20%. Mr. Speaker, I took the time to go through that one because, I'm trying to be helpful, and this information I think will be useful. I've already actually been contacted by someone who was involved with the Chamber of Commerce to ask if I could share this with them. I won't bother to give the breakdown by constituency of where the persons lived or the businesses were located. East End, 2%, North Side, 2%, Bordentown, 18%, Georgetown, 48%, West Bay, 12%, Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, no one responded from there, and online, 16%. I guess everything's good in Cayman Brac, right? Important question that I asked, do you feel the survival of your business is now threatened? 79% said yes, Mr. Speaker. 20% said no. Approximately how much longer can your business survive given the current conditions? 1 to 6 months, 53%. 7 to 12 months, 12%. Other, which I didn't bring that breakdown, but 34% said other, so they provided other timelines. Are you now contemplating redundancies or layoffs? 55% said yes, 44% said no. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that paints a pretty accurate picture of what I've been hearing on the ground in my constituency and other places of the plight of small businesses. And I provided that information to assist the government with moving forward to see what policies can be drafted, what we can come up with to continue to support small businesses as well. And I support the suggestion that maybe we should try to include them in this somehow. I know it's harder because of the risk involved and so forth. But if we lose, even of the 49 businesses that responded, if we lose half of them, and half of them said they'd probably be shutting down within the next 6 months, that's a major hit to this economy. And it's going to be a major hit to NAU and all those support services, the tourism stipend, all of that is going to be a chain reaction. So I'm trying to be useful in providing this information. I hope the government finds it helpful. Again, as I said, in principle, I support what the government is trying to do, but please bear these thoughts and concerns in mind when you move forward. And if the minister would consider that amendment, I would, and my constituents would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I shall not be long, despite what many of those on the other side will think of me, including the Premier. Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, we support the concept of stimulus. I believe this can be likened to stimulus that other countries in the world is doing to assist with businesses. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we can consider ourselves fairly lucky when it comes to our personal safety in this country and where we have reached. But there are areas that we need to ensure that our economy is sustained. Mr. Speaker, I had occasion to talk to a number of small businesses that are starting up as a result of this pandemic and the difficulties that we were experiencing. Those businesses, those small businesses, started as a result of the stimulus that the government was providing. And however, they were experiencing difficulties in getting their business done, in that the stimulus that was provided for micro and small business through the grant program, there were some businesses that had been started before, but they were small and they were just starting. And then they started developing clients who would qualify for those grants, which was proposed through and administered through Cayman Development Bank. And because Cayman Development Bank was providing a service to assist those who would qualify, they were somewhat reluctant to accept from these small businesses the same application. I spoke to the financial secretary concerning it and directed at least one small business to him. And as I understand it, he quite efficiently and effectively resolved that matter. Mr. Speaker, I said that to say that more than ever, we now need small businesses to start to be developed, particularly those that serve our local economy. I don't think we're going to see small businesses starting to import trinkets or tourism-related stuff to sell. But certainly there are those who have these ideas that they can now service the local economy and maybe retool themselves, reskill themselves. And yes, the minister did say that the programs were available. I think he considered them hand-holding and the likes. Mr. Speaker, I I also saw where the minister said that in his statement, the technical assistance program involved paid qualified accountants to assist with technical guidance and coaching to micro and small businesses to help them navigate that period and keeping their financial obligation to financial institution. I don't know if that is so widely known, though, that the government is paying for that. Because those that contacted me, they were charging minimal amounts to assist these people, albeit they were getting third or fourth of them. I don't know if it's so widely known that, or maybe it is that, Mr. Speaker, these people are not recognized by the government. And somehow the government needs to look into that and ensure that those small businesses and micro businesses are aware that they can engage someone and government will pay them out of the technical assistance, under the technical assistance program. There are many that don't know that. And I think that we need to let them know. Mr. Speaker, one of the other areas that I believe I had a brief conversation with yourself and the Premier this morning.
Honorable Member, the House is going to adjourn at 7. We do need to take a break. If I take the break now, can we come back at 6:15?
Well, you want quick 5 and short 10?
At 6:15 so that we can finish this motion. So if members are in agreement, certainly. But I don't want to move when people are in stride. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The House will suspend until 6:15.